Thanksgiving in Denver, in front of 18 relatives, my cousin sneered. Why are you even here? My mother just sipped her wine. An hour later, I opened the box that held their lie statements, receipts, recordings, and one transfer paper that froze the table. By the time the turkey was cold, 3 years and $90,000 were accounted for. Tonight wasn't for blessings. It was an audit for those who call family a burden. My name is Camila Bishop. I am 28 years old, and I am an ICU nurse at Horizon Ridge Health in Denver. For the last 3 years, I have lived in my childhood home with my mother, Elaine. I didn't move back in. I simply never left. Her diagnosis came just as I was looking for my own apartment, a 1-2 punch of type 2 diabetes and hypertension that she claimed was a minor inconvenience but which the doctors called a significant risk. So I stayed. Staying meant taking over. It started with just keeping an eye on her blood sugar, making sure she took her metformin. But within 6 months, staying meant I was covering the mortgage. Then it was the supplemental insurance, because her basic plan was a joke and she needed real coverage. Then it was the copays for her 3 different specialists, the statins for her cholesterol, the expensive new generation insulin, the test strips she burned through. For 3 years, I have been the sole financial pillar of this house. My paycheck, earned running 12-hour shifts in a unit where people fight for every breath, dissolves the moment it hits my account. Between the mortgage, the utilities, her medications, and the insurance premiums, I transfer between $2,500 and $3,000 every single month to cover her life. My mother, in turn, spends her afternoons talking about my cousin Logan. Logan is the family's golden boy. He's a consultant, which seems to mean he lives in a different city every year and posts photos on Facebook of himself holding craft cocktails on rooftops. He rarely comes home. His success is a given, a fact repeated at every holiday. Though no one seems to know what he actually does, his absence only makes the legend stronger. Then there is my other cousin, Brooke, who is studying communications at a community college for the 6th consecutive year. Likes to tell me my nursing career is a good stepping stone. She'll ask me at Christmas if I'm still just changing bedpans, her voice dripping with a bizarre mix of pity and contempt. I, who have held a human heart in my hand during open chest compressions, just nod and pass the green beans. In our family, there is an established hierarchy. Logan is the star, Brooke is the mascot, and I am the stage crew. Elaine, my mother, is the director. She polishes Logan's star until it blinds. When he calls, her entire voice changes, becoming lighter, younger. When I come home from a double shift that left me so tired my bones feel like sand, she glances up from the television and asks if I remembered to buy milk. I have become invisible in the house I pay for. I am used to it. Or perhaps, more accurately, I am numb to it. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the dynamic shifted. Logan called, his voice apparently stripped of its usual bravado. He'd hit a rough patch. The consulting gig had restructured. He and his new wife, Marla, needed a place to land for just a little while. My mother was ecstatic. She spent a full day cleaning the guest room, a room that hadn't been used in 5 years. Then she came to my door. "Camilla, honey," she started, that falsely sweet tone she used before a big ask. "Logan and Marla are coming. You know, his situation." "I heard," I said, folding my scrubs for the next day. "Well, Marla is used to, well, they're a married couple. They need a proper room. Your room has the attached bathroom." I stopped folding. "What are you saying?" "I'm just saying, it's temporary. It just makes sense for you to move into the storage room for a few weeks, just until they get on their feet." The storage room, the windowless, 10-by-8 box off the laundry room, it held old Christmas decorations, a broken vacuum, and the water heater. It was not a bedroom. It was a closet that happened to have an electrical outlet. "Mom, I work nights. I sleep during the day. That room is right next to the washing machine," I protested, my voice staying carefully flat. "Oh, don't be dramatic. Camila, I'll just do laundry while you're at the hospital. It will be fine. It's for family. So, I moved. I dragged my mattress into the cramped space, jamming it against a tower of dusty storage bins. The room smelled of mildew and stale laundry detergent. The only light was a single, buzzing fluorescent fixture overhead that cast everything in a sickly, flickering glare. Logan and Marla arrived 2 days later, not in a beat-up sedan, but in a late-model Audi SUV. Marla swept into the house like a minor duchess, sniffing the air as if it offended her. She was all sharp angles and expensive-looking, minimalist beige clothing. Logan, looking softer and less successful than his Facebook photo suggested, gave me a brief, awkward hug that felt like gripping a damp sponge. Within 48 hours, Marla had begun freshening the place up. This apparently meant erasing me. I came home from a code-filled nightmare of a shift to find the small collection of my nursing awards and my framed diploma, which had hung in the hallway, gone. I found them in the bottom of the kitchen trash can, under coffee grounds. "Oh, that," Marla said, not even looking up from her laptop when I placed the dirtied frames on the counter. "It was just so much clutter. Sweetie, this whole wall has a much cleaner vibe now. Don't you think?" My mother, standing right there, nodded in agreement. "She's right. Camilla, Marla has a real eye for design. It looks much more modern." I said nothing. I just cleaned the coffee grounds off my degree, took the frames to the storage room, and slid them under my mattress. Sleep became a fantasy. The thin door did nothing to block the noise. The washing machine ran constantly, a sloshing, churning thunder that vibrated through my mattress. Even when it was silent, the smell of bleach and fabric softener was so strong it made my eyes water. The single fluorescent light gave me a pulsing headache, so I kept it off. Living in the dark, my back, already protesting from years of lifting patients, began to seize up from the lumpy mattress on the floor. I was perpetually exhausted, walking into the ICU feeling like I'd already been hit by a truck. After a week of this, I tried to establish order. I typed up a simple chore chart. Basic things: run the dishwasher, take out the trash, don't run the laundry during the day on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays when I was trying to sleep post-shift. I taped it to the refrigerator. That evening, I heard Marla laugh. It was a high, tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. "A chore chart," she said to Logan, loud enough for me to hear from my closet. Is she serious? How old are we? 12. When I went to get a bottle of water, the chart was gone. In its place was a magnetic notepad with a cartoon flamingo on it, holding a shopping list for Prosecco and artisanal brie. I confronted my mother privately. "I need to sleep," I said, my voice low. "I can't take care of patients if I'm a zombie. I almost missed a decimal on a heparin drip today. Do you understand what that means?" "Camila, you are being so dramatic," she hissed, glancing toward the living room where Marla was showing her paint swatches on her phone. "You're making them feel unwelcome. They are our guests." "I pay the mortgage on this house," I said, the words tasting like acid. "And I am your mother," she snapped. "Family helps family. End of story. Now stop this kitchen." The final seal on my isolation was the family group text. My phone buzzed on the washing machine, the new text lighting up the dark room. It was from my aunt. "Big news, everyone. Brooke is taking charge of Thanksgiving dinner this year. She's going to lead the whole thing and make it really classy." Text after text flooded in. "How wonderful. Brooke, can't wait. Let us know what to bring. Sweetie." Brooke, the girl who considered boiling pasta an act of culinary genius, was now in charge of the most complicated meal of the year. It was a clear signal. This wasn't a family holiday. It was a performance, and I was not in the cast. I stared at the glowing screen. The smell of Tide was suffocating. My back throbbed, a dull, deep ache that synced up with the buzzing of the overhead light I had been forced to turn on to find my phone. I had another shift starting in 6 hours, a 12-hour shift on Thanksgiving Day, followed by another on Black Friday. I opened my alarm app. I set the alarm for 9 p.m. I closed my eyes, listening to the distant sound of Marla and my mother laughing in the kitchen I paid for. I took a slow breath, inhaling the chemical floral scent. Just survive the holiday, I told myself. Survive the shift. Survive the dinner. Just get through this. That's all you have to do. This was not new. The sting of disrespect felt sharp, but the bruise underneath was old, deep, and familiar. Lying on the floor of the storage room, listening to the muffled sounds of my home being rearranged by strangers. I was 8 years old again. I was at the kitchen table, watching my aunt sign Logan up for guitar lessons. He'd seen a rock star on television and decided he wanted an electric guitar. A week later, a shiny black Fender amplifier was in his room. I waited a month. Then I asked, very quietly, if I could maybe take piano lessons at the local community center. My mother, Elaine, didn't even look up from chopping onions. Don't be silly. Camila, that's Logan's thing. Besides, where would we even put a piano? Be realistic. The lessons were $20 a week. I knew. I had the flyer clutched in my hand. But it wasn't about the money or the space. It was about the spotlight. There was only enough for one cousin, and Logan had claimed it. Years later, when I got the acceptance letter from the nursing program at Horizon Ridge Health, the one that came with the scholarship that would cover 60% of my tuition, I ran into the living room. I held out the paper, my hands shaking with a relief so profound it felt like I could finally breathe. Elaine was watching a game show. She took the letter, glanced at the first line. "Oh, that's good," she said. She handed it back to me. "You're blocking the screen." She turned back to the TV, where a man was spinning a giant, glittering wheel. I stood there for a full minute, the letter drooping in my hand. I had just saved us tens of thousands of dollars we didn't have, and she hadn't even asked which school. I went to my room, closed the door, and learned the lesson that would define my life. The more capable I became, the more I achieved, the less she saw me. My competence made me invisible. I was the load-bearing wall. You only notice it when it's gone. Now that invisibility was being enforced. Marla was on a mission of beige infixation. She called it calm minimalism. I called it erasure. I came home from my shift on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, to a house I didn't recognize. Every family photo was gone. The picture of me at my nursing graduation, replaced by a framed print of a single, abstract beige leaf. The photos of my grandparents gone. In their place, on every surface, were scented candles, dozens of them. They were all unlit, just sitting there, smelling aggressively of sandalwood and coastal linen. "Doesn't it just feel so much more intentional?" Marla asked, running a hand along the bare mantelpiece. "It's wonderful," Elaine gushed, trailing behind her like a lady in waiting. "You have such impeccable taste, Marla. I never knew how much all that stuff was dragging the place down." All that stuff, my life, my past. I swallowed the knot of battery acid in my throat. I looked at the wall where my diploma used to be. It was just a blank, freshly painted beige space. My phone buzzed. It was an Instagram notification. Brooke had tagged me in a story. I opened it. It was a video of her, using a glitter filter, panning across our living room, which was now filled with black trash bags. "Just helping my amazing Aunt Elaine clear out all the old junk before the holidays," the caption read, with a heart emoji. "So much clutter, clean slate." I zoomed in on one of the open bags. Sticking out of the top was the corner of my high school yearbook and the faded blue ribbon from a science fair I'd won. That was the moment the numbness cracked. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, sharp clarity, the kind I get in the ICU right before a patient crashes, when emotion vanishes and all that's left is procedure. I walked back to my storage room closet. I took the trash bag I'd been using for my own dirty scrubs and dumped them onto the floor. I went back to the kitchen, pulled the bags Brooke had packed out of the trash pile, and dragged them to my room. I sat on the floor under the single buzzing light, and I began to sort, not as a daughter, but as an auditor. I started taking pictures with my phone. The receipt for the new water heater from last year, $450, paid for my checking account. The stack of pharmacy printouts stapled together. Month after month, the paper mortgage statements, all addressed to Elaine Bishop and Camilla Bishop, but showing the automated payment from my bank account, the auto insurance declarations, the utility bills. I photographed every single one. This wasn't new, either. This instinct to document, it was a defense mechanism I'd built over years of being told, "That never happened," or "You're remembering it wrong." My memory was a vault, but I learned early on that I needed external proof. I opened my laptop, the fan whirring in protest from the dust in the room. I opened a new Excel spreadsheet. I saved it to my secure cloud drive. I named it House Care, XLSX. It was simple. Column A date, column B expense type mortgage, insulin, utilities, insurance. Column C, amount. Column D, cleared account, my checking. I started with the most recent, November 1st, $2,000, mortgage and escrow, November 4th, $812, pharmacy refill for Elaine, November 5th, $320, supplemental insurance premium. I worked backwards. My fingers flew across the keys. The methodical click-clack, a counter rhythm to the festive noises in the house. I could hear them in the kitchen. Marla and Elaine, laughing. I could smell the beginnings of Thanksgiving. Someone was chopping celery and onions. The savory, warm smell of sage began to creep under my door. It was the smell of every holiday I'd ever known, but this time it felt alien. It was the smell of a party I was not invited to, happening in a house I was paying for. When I was done with the last 3 months, the total at the bottom of column C was already over $9,000. I kept going. I pulled up my online banking, going back 1 year, then 2, then 3. The numbers piled up, row after row of meticulous, undeniable fact. My phone buzzed. A text from Maddie Torres, my best friend and the charge nurse on my unit. Maddie, you alive? Haven't heard from you since you got kicked out of your own room. Me barely. They've colonized the house. Marla threw out my diploma. Maddie, she what? Cammy, you are a saint. I would have committed felonious assault. Me, I'm just trying to survive until my shift tonight. Maddie, you're still working Thanksgiving. Yep, 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. I'm almost grateful. At least the ICU makes sense. Maddie, listen to me. You've been complaining about this for years, but this is different. Are you keeping your paperwork? Me, I'm making a spreadsheet. Maddie. Good girl. Keep every single receipt, every pharmacy stub, every bank statement. Scan it, back it up. You need a paper trail for the day you finally decide to burn it all down. People like that. They only understand receipts. She was right. I looked at the spreadsheet, the numbers glowing in the dark. This was my truth. The great unspoken lie of our household was Elaine's absolute denial of her own financial reality. She lived in a fantasy world where her meager disability check and what Medicare covers was keeping this house afloat. She never asked. In 3 years, she had never once asked me, "Camila, how much does my insulin cost?" She didn't want to know. She didn't want to know that the little blue and white box I picked up from the pharmacy every 3 weeks cost more than her car payment used to. She just held out her hand, and I put the medicine in it. She preferred the magic trick. She preferred me to be the invisible magician. The smell of turkey roasting was stronger now. Thanksgiving morning, I had managed about 4 hours of broken, nightmare-filled sleep. The house was alive with conversation. I could hear Logan's booming, false laugh and Brooke's high-pitched shrieking. They were all here, the whole clan. I slipped out of my room and into the small half-bath down the hall, the only one Marla hadn't restyled yet. I looked in the mirror. My skin was pale. The fluorescent light in the storage room had given me a permanent, dull headache, and dark circles were carved under my eyes. I looked like a ghost haunting my own home. I went back to my room. In my bag, hidden under my work scrubs, was my own contribution to the holiday, a $6 single-serving pumpkin pie from the 7-Eleven. I had bought it on my way home from my last shift. a small, pathetic act of self-preservation. I took a sticky note and wrote on it, "Camila, for after shift. Do not eat." I stuck it on the flimsy plastic container and shoved it behind a box of old tax returns. My phone lit up on the floor. The family group chat. Aunt Marjorie, who is saying the blessing tonight before we eat. A beat. Then Brooke's name popped up. "Brooke, I'll do it. I'd love to. I have so much to be thankful for this year." I looked at her text. I looked at my spreadsheet. The grand total, now nearing $90,000. I looked at my hidden, cheap little pie. I shut the laptop. I zipped up my work bag. My stethoscope cold against my hand. I just had to get through the dinner. Just a few hours. Then I could escape to the hospital, where the stakes were life and death. But at least the rules were clear. The dining room was a stage set, meticulously crafted by Marla and Brooke to be aggressively festive. It looked nothing like the room I'd grown up in. It looked like a page ripped from a high-end catalog. The kind that sells a fantasy of family rather than the real thing. The table was draped in heavy linen the color of oatmeal. Sprigs of maple leaves, probably plastic, were woven around a centerpiece of unlit, beige pillar candles. The overhead light was off, the room lit only by the flickering candles, which cast long, dramatic shadows and made everyone look vaguely cinematic. Brooke was circling the table with her smartphone, her body contorted as she tried to find the perfect angle. "It just has to be perfect," she was muttering, pushing a salt shaker a millimeter to the left. "This is the shot. This is the 100,000 view table shot. I can feel it." At the head of the table, my mother, Elaine, sat like a queen presiding over a court she didn't own. She wore a new silk blouse, one I hadn't seen before, and her hair was perfectly styled. She was holding a large glass of red wine, swirling it slowly, her eyes bright with a kind of social adrenaline. She looked happy. She looked proud. Marla and Logan were at the other end, near the kitchen. Marla was holding the electric carving knife like a prop, posing with it over the enormous, glistening turkey. Logan stood beside her, one hand in his pocket, a smirk playing on his lips. He was the man of the hour, the returning prodigal son, and he was soaking in the attention. I had 10 minutes before I needed to change into my scrubs. My shift started at 10 p.m. It was now 6. I had come straight from my storage room, my eyes aching from the fluorescent light, and the warm, dim glow of the dining room felt like a physical blow. I was holding the large wooden bowl of salad I'd prepared, simple spring greens, walnuts, and cranberries, a light, healthy counterbalance to the mountain of beige carbohydrates piling up on the sideboard. "Oh, Camilla," Brooke said, not looking up from her phone. "Just put that on the kitchen counter. It doesn't really go with the color palette." I stopped. "It's the salad." "I know. It's just so green," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's ruining the earth tones. Just put it in the kitchen. People can get it if they really want it." I looked at my mother. Elaine just gave me a small, tight smile and motioned with her glass toward the kitchen. I turned around, placed the salad I'd spent 20 minutes preparing on the crowded kitchen counter, where it was immediately obscured by a stack of dirty roasting pans, and went back to the dining room. The only seat left was a folding chair, brought in from the garage. Squeezed between my Aunt Marjorie and the wall, I sat down, my knees brushing the tablecloth. "Okay, everyone," Brooke announced, finally satisfied. She propped her phone on a small tripod at the end of the sideboard. "I'm recording for the family podcast, so let's have some toasts, Aunt Elaine." Elaine lifted her glass, her rings catching the candlelight. "I just want to say how truly thankful I am to have my whole family here, especially my wonderful son, Logan, and his brilliant, beautiful wife, Marla." Marla blew her a kiss. "They have brought such style and life back into this old house," Elaine continued. "And Brooke, darling, what a wonderful job you've done. Everything is just perfect." The table murmured in agreement. My Aunt Marjorie patted my arm. "It's nice to have you here too, dear," she whispered, as if I were a distant cousin, invited out of pity. The toasts continued, all centered on Logan, his courageous new venture, his brilliant pivot in the market. He was, apparently, on the verge of launching a startup, some vague app that optimized remote workflow synergies. "We're actually closing our seed round of funding right after the new year," Logan said, accepting the metaphorical crown. He leaned back, projecting an air of relaxed confidence. "It's a difficult climate for capital, of course, but when you have a truly disruptive product, the investors will find you." "Oh, Logan, that's just wonderful," my mother gushed. "It hasn't been easy, of course," Logan said, his voice dropping into a more serious, captain of industry tone. "The last year was about consolidation. Marla and I have had to make some tough decisions, restructure our assets. It's all about managing resources properly, knowing what's an expense and what's an investment." I had been silent, pushing a piece of stuffing around on my plate. I was exhausted. My back ached from the floor. My head throbbed, and this word, resources, echoed in the small, cold space in my brain where my anger lived. I looked at my mother, her face glowing with adoration for her successful son. I looked at the new silk blouse. I looked at the expensive wine she was drinking. I kept my voice very low, barely above the candlelight flicker. "Speaking of resources, who paid Mom's supplemental insurance premium this month?" The effect was instantaneous. It wasn't a bomb. It was a vacuum. All the air left the room. My uncle's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Marla's painted-on smile froze. My mother's hand, holding her wine glass, paused in midair. Even Brooke looked up from her phone, into this sudden, absolute silence. Brooke's voice cracked like a whip. "Camilla, why are you even here?" It wasn't a real question. It was an accusation. My head snapped toward her. She was glaring at me, her face pinched with genuine disgust. "You're always like this, always trying to ruin everything. We're having a beautiful, positive family dinner, and you have to bring up boring, negative things like bills." I looked for my mother. It was a reflex, the last dying instinct of a child looking for protection. Our eyes met across the table. I saw her face harden. I saw the annoyance. I saw her choose. She did not defend me. She did not correct Brooke. She did not say, "Camilla is here because this is her home, the home she pays for." My mother, Elaine, lifted her glass of red wine to her lips, took a slow, deliberate sip, and looked away, turning her attention to the centerpiece. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute. It was almost clarifying. I felt the last thread of hope, the one I hadn't even known I was holding. Snap. Logan cleared his throat. Sensing the social disaster, he put on his consultant voice. Okay, let's not bicker. The truth is, things have been disorganized. Now that Marla and I are going to be here more long-term, we're going to have to, well, rearrange the living situation properly." Marla, seeing her opening, set the carving knife down. She placed her hand on Logan's arm, a perfect picture of the supportive wife. "He's right. And Camilla, sweetie, we've been talking about this. We're worried about you." I stared at her. "You're worried about me?" "Yes," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You're stuck. You're living in this house, in that little room. You're not growing. You're almost 30. It's time for you to be independent. It's time for you to get out on your own. Live your own life." She was suggesting I be evicted from my own house so they could be more comfortable. And then, the final, killing blow. "She's right, honey," my mother said, her voice soft and gentle, the one she used when she was pretending to be reasonable. "You're young. You're smart. You shouldn't be cooped up here taking care of your old mother. You should be out living your own life. It's what's best for you." They were agreeing, all three of them. In front of 18 relatives, they were tag-teaming my removal. I looked down at my plate. The food had gone cold. I was holding my spoon, my knuckles white. I could feel the eyes of the entire table on me, waiting for the explosion. They were waiting for the dramatic Camilla to burst into tears or start screaming. I did neither. I felt a profound, icy calm settle over me. It was the same calm I felt before a code. The patient is crashing. The alarms are screaming. Panic is useless. Emotion is a liability. All that matters is the procedure. They thought this was an argument. They were wrong. This was a diagnosis. I very carefully placed my spoon down on the side of my plate. I did not throw it. I did not make a sound. I'm not going to say a word. I thought, I'm going to let them talk. I'm going to let them say everything. I looked up at Marla. Go on, I said. My voice quiet. The awkwardness returned. They had expected a fight, not an invitation. Well, Logan stammered, it's just a thought. We can discuss the logistics later. The spell was broken. My Aunt Marjorie started talking too loudly about the weather. My uncle asked Logan about his old car. The performance of Thanksgiving resumed, strained and brittle, but resumed nonetheless. I sat there, invisible again. I didn't eat. I just watched them. I watched my mother laugh at a joke Logan told. I watched Marla discuss dessert with my aunt, Brooke. Sensing the crisis was averted and a candid moment was available, picked up her phone again. Everyone, smile, she commanded. The table obediently turned toward her. Logan put his arm around Marla. My mother lifted her wine glass again, her face a mask of hostess-like joy. The flash went off. Once, twice, 3 times. It was blinding, illuminating their smiling faces, their perfect teeth, their complete and utter denial. Brooke was capturing beautiful, happy pictures for a deeply, profoundly ugly story. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:30, 90 minutes until my shift. I couldn't wait. I didn't go back to the table. I pushed the scraping metal legs of the folding chair back, and the sound cut through the forced chatter. No one looked at me, or if they did, I didn't see them. I walked straight past the dining room, down the hall to my closet. The smell of detergent and mildew hit me, but it felt different. It was no longer an oppression. It was an ending. I didn't own a suitcase. They were all in the attic, filled with my mother's old clothes. I reached under the washing machine and pulled out the box of thick, black, 30-gallon trash bags. I tore one off the roll. The sound of the plastic snapping open was the loudest thing I had heard all night. It was the only real sound. I began to pack. It was a triage. What do you need to survive? I dumped my dirty scrubs onto the floor. I folded the 4 clean sets I owned and laid them in the bottom of the bag. My work shoes, my stethoscope, my laptop, which I slid between the folded pants, the charger cord. I reached under the lumpy mattress and pulled out the items Marla had discarded: my framed diploma, my certification plaques, my Nurse of the Year award from 2 years ago. I put them face down in the bag, the glass clinking softly against the plastic. Then I took the manila folder from the top of the storage bin, the one labeled Household. It contained the paper copies, the mortgage statements, the pharmacy printouts from before I started the spreadsheet, the car insurance declaration for my mother's car, which I also paid. I put the entire folder on top of my scrubs. I tied the bag shut. It was heavy, awkward. I dragged it out of the room. My mother was standing in the hallway, by the entrance to the dining room. She had just stood up from the table. She was holding her half-full glass of red wine. Her face was unreadable in the dim, festive light. She was watching me. She didn't move. She didn't step forward to block me. She didn't put a hand out. She didn't say, "Camilla, what are you doing?" She didn't say, "Don't be dramatic." She didn't say, "Please, let's talk about this." She just stood there, gripping her wine, and she let me go. Her silence was the loudest, most definitive rejection of my entire life. I looked past her, into the living room. Logan was on his phone, his back to the hall, laughing loudly at something. He was networking. Marla was in the kitchen, rattling pans, making a big show of preparing dessert. They were both deliberately, theatrically busy. They were not going to be involved in the unpleasantness of my departure. I didn't say goodbye. There was no one to say it to. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My fingers were perfectly steady. I opened my text messages to Maddie. I'm out. I'm coming over now. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked to the front door, dragging the heavy black bag with one hand. It thumped against the hardwood floor. I opened the door. The rush of cold, sharp November air was a shock. It felt like walking out of a tomb. I stepped onto the porch. I pulled the door shut behind me, not slamming it, just letting the latch click firmly into place. I put the bag in the trunk of my car. I got in. I sat for a moment in the darkness, my hands on the steering wheel. I looked at the clock. 8:40. My shift started in an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't go to Maddie's. I drove to the hospital. I parked in the employee garage, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and put my trash bag of a life into the bottom of my locker. I changed into a clean set of scrubs. At 9:58 p.m., I swiped my badge and walked into the sterile, beeping chaos of the intensive care unit. For the next 12 hours, I was not a daughter. I was a nurse. I was the person in charge. At 11 p.m., I titrated a fentanyl drip for a post-op heart. At 1:30 a.m., I coordinated a stat head CT for a patient with a sudden cognitive decline. At 3:15 we coded a man in room 12. I was on his chest for 8 minutes, my arms burning, my mind empty of everything except the rhythm 1 and 2 and 3. We got him back. At 7 a.m., I held the hand of a woman in room 7 as she died. Her own family long gone. I did the post-mortem care. I charted. I answered questions. I gave reports. It was exhausting, brutal, and honest work. No one hid. No one lied. The stakes were real. At 10:05 a.m. on Friday, I walked out of the hospital into a cold, bright morning. I felt scoured clean, hollowed out by adrenaline and exhaustion. I got in my car and drove. Not to the house I had paid for, but to Maddie's apartment across town. Her door was unlocked, just as she'd said. I let myself in. The apartment was small and warm. Maddie was at her own shift. It smelled of peppermint tea and something faintly sweet. Her gray sofa was old and soft, covered in knitted blankets. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I dropped my bag by the door. I didn't shower. I didn't change. I walked to the sofa, collapsed onto it, and pulled one of the blankets over me. I lay there, just listening. The silence was profound. There was no washing machine, no buzzing, flickering fluorescent light, no angry, muffled voices through a thin door, just the gentle hum of her refrigerator and the distant sound of morning traffic. 5 floors below, my breathing, which had been shallow and tight in my chest for weeks, hitched once, a dry, rasping sound, a sob that had no tears behind it. Then it deepened. My body, finally recognizing safety, simply shut down. For the first time in what felt like years, I slept. It was not the thin, agitated sleep of the storage room. It was a deep, black, heavy oblivion. I woke up to darkness. It was Friday evening. My body was stiff, but the throbbing ache in my back was gone. My phone was vibrating on the hardwood floor where I'd dropped my purse. I fumbled for it. The screen lit up. 7 missed calls, all from Elaine. As I stared at the screen, it lit up again. She was calling for the 8th time. I stared at the name. My heart started a slow, heavy drumbeat. I pressed the button. "Hello?" I said. My voice was rough with sleep. "Camilla." "Oh, thank goodness I've been calling and calling." Her voice was bright, cheerful. It was her breezy, afternoon chatting voice. It was the voice of a woman who had not seen her daughter pack her life into a trash bag and walk out of her life less than 24 hours earlier. "I was sleeping," I said. "Oh, well, that's good," she said, as if I'd been at a spa. "Listen, honey, I'm at the pharmacy. I'm at the counter right now." The pharmacist was being difficult about the refill, but I charmed him into overriding it. "I need you to transfer the money." I sat up on the sofa. The blanket fell away. The small apartment was cold. "What? The money for my medicine," she repeated, a little slower, as if I were stupid. "It's $812. just like it always is. He's waiting. Can you just do it now on your phone app? I don't want to hold up the line. I held the phone away from my ear and looked at it. $812. In 3 years. She had never known the number. She had never asked. She had lived in a willful, determined ignorance. But now, standing at the counter, faced with the bill herself, she had learned the number down to the last dollar. She wasn't calling to ask if I was safe. She wasn't calling to apologize. She wasn't calling to ask where I was. She was calling to get a bill paid. I was silent for 5 full seconds. I could hear the tinny sound of the pharmacy's overhead music through her receiver. "Camila," she said, her voice sharpening with impatience. "Did you hear me? I need the money." I took a breath. The decision was cold and simple. "Ask Logan," I said. I pressed the red end call button. My hand was shaking. I had never hung up on her in my life. The phone immediately began to ring again, buzzing violently on the floor. But it wasn't her. It was Logan. I answered on the first ring. "What the hell?" "Camila," he shouted. No greeting. "Hello, Logan," I said. My voice was clear and cold. "Mom is at the pharmacy, stranded. She's crying. She says you hung up on her and you won't pay for her medicine. What is your problem?" "My problem," I said, "is that it is no longer my problem." "What are you even talking about? It's medicine. She needs it. She said it's like $800. Why is it so expensive? That's insane." The casual, genuine shock in his voice, the shock at a number I had been quietly bleeding out every single month, was the final confirmation. "Yes, it is expensive, Logan," I said. My voice was flat, detached, as if I were explaining a procedure to a new medical student. "That's the copay for her Lantus, her Januvia, her Metformin, and her Lisinopril. It has been that price every month for 3 years. You just never had to see the bill." There was a pause. I could hear him processing. He was realizing that this was not a simple errand. "Look," he said finally, his tone shifting from anger to the annoyed, put-upon sigh of a man being forced to manage an inconvenient situation. "Fine. Okay, I get it. You're making a point. You're upset. But you can't just stop. She's our mother. You still have to keep paying for now. I'll talk to Marla. We'll figure out a way to contribute something going forward. But you have to pay it. Right now. She's waiting." He was negotiating. He was handling me. He was promising a vague contribution just to get me to solve the immediate, embarrassing problem. "No," I said. What do you mean?" "No," he snapped. "I mean, no, I am not paying it. You told me it was time for me to be independent. You told me to get out on my own. This is it. This is the rearrangement you wanted. It's your turn. Logan, you can't do this to us," he yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "She needs her medicine." "Then you had better pay for it," I said. I hung up the phone. I immediately powered it off. I sat in the darkness of Maddie's apartment. The silence was absolute. My heart was hammering so hard I felt it in my throat. I was terrified, and for the first time in my life, I was free. I got up, walked to my trash bag, and pulled out my laptop. I sat at Maddie's small kitchen table, booted it up, and connected to her Wi-Fi. I opened my encrypted cloud drive. I opened the file, house care, XLSX, all the glowing numbers, all the quiet facts. I moved my cursor to the bottom of the screen. I right-clicked on the tab. I selected Insert Sheet. I renamed the new tab. I called it Proof Holidays. For 2 weeks, the silence was absolute. I kept my phone on, half expecting a barrage of angry texts from my aunts, from Brooke, from anyone. Nothing came. It was as if, by walking out the door, I had simply ceased to exist. They had closed ranks, and the story of Thanksgiving, my story, was already being rewritten in my absence. I threw myself into my work. I picked up every extra shift I could find. I worked 4 12-hour nights in a row, slept on Maddie's sofa, and then went back and did another 2. The ICU was a sanctuary of logic. In the unit, cause and effect were real. Actions had consequences. Facts mattered. When I documented a patient's decline, no one told me I was being dramatic. They read the chart and acted. I was floating, untethered. Maddie was a rock, never asking questions, just leaving mugs of peppermint tea for me and ensuring the apartment was dark and quiet during the day. I was living on hospital cafeteria food and adrenaline. The hole in my bank account, usually emptied by the first of the month, remained full. The money just sat there. It felt strange, heavy, like an object I didn't know what to do with. Then, on the 1st of December, exactly 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, the phone rang. It was Elaine. Her voice was not cheerful this time. It was thin, high-pitched, and trembling with a panic that was not manufactured. "Camilla," the bank called. I sat up. I was in my scrubs, about to leave for another shift. "What about the bank, Mom?" "The mortgage? They said it's overdue. They sent me a letter, a red letter. It says, notice of intent." "What does that mean?" You just handled it." "It means the payment for December 1st was not made," I said, my voice flat. "Well, I know that," she shrieked. "Logan paid for my medicine. He had to use his credit card, and he said he can't afford this too. He said you have to pay it." "Camilla, they're going to take my house." "It's my house too," I said, very quietly. "My name is on the loan. I know exactly what the notice means." "You have to fix this," she cried. "You have to call them. Just transfer the money, please. I don't understand any of this." I looked at the clock. "I can't talk now. I'm going to work." "You can't go to work. This is an emergency." "I will meet you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., the coffee shop by the hospital, the one on Grant." "Why there?" "Just come to the house." 9 a.m., at the coffee shop, I said. "If you want to talk about the mortgage, you'll be there." I hung up the phone. The next morning, I arrived at 8:45. The coffee shop was bright, sterile, and cold. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating every speck of dust on the concrete floor. It was not a cozy place. It was a place for transactions. I did not buy a coffee. I sat at a small metal table near the window, in the coldest, brightest patch of sun. I placed a single manila folder on the table in front of me. Elaine rushed in at 9:02. She looked awful. Her hair was a mess, and she was wearing the same stained sweatsuit she'd had on 2 weeks ago. The proud, put-together matriarch from Thanksgiving was gone. This was the woman who had lived in my shadow. "Camilla," she said, sliding into the chair opposite me, her voice breathy with panic. "Thank God. Did you call the bank? Are you going to fix it?" "I am not going to fix it," I said. I opened the folder. "We are going to look at this." I slid the first piece of paper across the table. It was the printout of the Excel file, the main tab. House Care, XLSX. "What is this?" she asked, her eyes darting around nervously, avoiding the paper. "This is the last 3 years of your life," I said. "This is what you have been refusing to see." I pointed to the first column. "This is the date. This is the expense type. This is the amount. And this," I tapped the last column, "is the account it was paid from. Every single entry says, Camilla Bishop, checking." She stared at it. I watched her eyes try to make sense of the rows. "I don't understand spreadsheets. Camilla, you know that? Just tell me you'll pay the bank." "Look at the lines. Mom." My voice was as sharp and thin as a scalpel. "You'll see a repeating number, $950. That's the mortgage. Paid on the 1st of every month for 36 months. Then you'll see this one, $812, on or around the 4th of the month. That's the pharmacy copay, your insulin, your diabetes medication, your blood pressure pills." I slid a second, stapled sheaf of papers toward her. "These are the pharmacy receipts. You can cross-reference the dates." I pointed back to the spreadsheet. "Then there's this one, $320. That's the supplemental health insurance premium. That is the only reason your medication copay is only $800. Without this, It would be closer to 4,000. Then we have the utilities, the car insurance for your car, the grocery bills, which I have averaged out to $500 a month. That's being generous." She was silent. Her hand had crept up to her mouth. "Do you see the total?" "Mom," I asked. I pointed to the bottom right of the page. The bolded number. "In the last 36 months, I have personally paid $89,455 to keep you in this house, medicated and fed." Her hand, the one not covering her mouth, began to shake. It was a fine, rattling tremor against the metal table. "89,000, she whispered. "No, that can't be right." "It's all here," I said. "Every receipt, every bank transfer, it's all here." She finally looked at me, her eyes wide and wet with a terror that was not for me, but for herself. I thought Medicare. I thought Medicare covered it. I thought it was just covered." It was the excuse I had been waiting for my entire life. "It doesn't cover it," I said, my voice dropping. "And you knew that. You knew it. But you never, ever asked. You never once asked me, how much does it cost? You didn't want to know. You wanted me to be the invisible machine that just made it all work. You wanted to pretend. It was easier to pretend." I stood up. The metal chair scraped loudly on the concrete. "Camila," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Camila, sit down. Please, you're scaring me." "I'm not going to pay the mortgage," I said, looking down at her. "I have to go to work. I'm picking up another shift." I left the papers on the table, the spreadsheet, the pharmacy receipts. I left them all there, in the cold patch of sunlight. I walked out of the coffee shop and did not look back. The next day, there was a pounding on Maddie's apartment door. It wasn't a knock. It was a fist. Maddie was at work. I was in my pajamas, drinking a cup of tea. I looked through the peephole. It was Marla. She looked furious, her face blotchy and red. I opened the door. "You bitch!" she hissed, trying to push past me into the apartment. I put my hand on the doorframe, blocking her. "What do you want?" "Marla, you're trying to kill her. You are literally trying to kill your own mother. She is a disabled, sick woman, and you are trying to make her homeless. You are a monster. Elaine is not being made homeless. She has a son. She has you. We can't pay that. We don't have that kind of money. You have a hospital job. You have all this money." "The money I have," I said, "is because I am no longer paying for you, for Logan, and for my mother's denial." "She needs her medicine," Marla shrieked, her voice rising. "She's going to die. She told me you cut her off from her medicine. What is wrong with you?" "Which medicine are you referring to?" "Marla," I asked. My voice was suddenly, clinically calm. She paused. Which prescription does she need that I cut her off from? Are you talking about the Lantus Solostar, which is the long-acting insulin, 100 units per milliliter, or are you talking about the Januvia, the 100 milligram oral tablets, or is it the metformin, which she takes twice a day to control her blood glucose? Or maybe, I stepped closer to the door. You're talking about the lisinopril, for the hypertension you and Logan didn't even know she had, the one that, if she stops taking it, puts her at massive risk for a stroke. Marla's mouth opened and closed. She had no words. She had come for a fight, for an emotional, screaming match. She had run, full speed, into a wall of medical facts. "You don't even know what you're talking about," I continued, my voice still quiet. "You just saw an opportunity to live for free. You told me to be independent. You told me to get out of the house. You got what you wanted. The consequences of that are now yours. They belong to you and Logan. You are a cold, pathetic, ungrateful. You need to leave," I said. I was not yelling. I was not angry. I was finished. "You can't just get off this property, Marla, or I will call the police." I closed the door in her face. I did not slam it. I just shut it, and I turned the deadbolt. I stood there, listening to her sputter and curse on the other side, and then I heard her stomp away. That evening, my phone rang. It was Elaine. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered. I said nothing. All I could hear was her, weeping. Not the panicked cries from the bank call, but a deep, broken, gulping sob. It was the sound of a woman who had truly hit the bottom. "Camilla," she wept. "I'm sorry. I looked at the papers. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know. Please, I'm sorry." I listened. I did not feel pity. I did not feel anger. I felt nothing. I was a chart, listening to a symptom. "I don't know what to do," she cried. Logan can't. He's in debt. That whole startup thing. It's all debt. He has nothing. Camilla, he has less than nothing." So there it was, the final truth. The golden boy was a black hole. I took a breath. "This is what you are going to do," I said, my nurse's voice taking over. "I am going to make one final payment. I will pay the mortgage for December. That gives you 30 days. You understand?" "Yes," she whispered. "You are going to call the Colorado Area Agency on Aging tomorrow morning. You are also going to apply for Medicaid. You will likely qualify for full assistance, now that my income is no longer part of your household. They will assign you a caseworker, and that person will help you manage your medical bills." Okay. I am going to transfer the $950 to the mortgage company right now. This is the last one. This is the end. I will not be sending any more money. I will not be answering any more calls about bills. "Camilla, I'm sorry." "I have to go," I said. I opened my banking app. I authorized the payment. I sent it. "The transfer is complete," I said. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up the phone. The first paycheck that was entirely my own felt wrong. It sat in my bank account, undiminished by the familiar, massive withdrawals for the mortgage and the pharmacy. For 3 days, I just looked at it. The number didn't seem real. I had been living so long as a financial conduit, a simple pass-through entity for my mother's needs, that I had forgotten what it meant to earn money for myself. After 2 more weeks on Maddie's couch, I had enough for a deposit and first month's rent. I found a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, a 400-square-foot box on the 3rd floor of an old brick building. It had hardwood floors that creaked, a radiator that hissed, and a tiny kitchen with a half-size stove. It was perfect. When I signed the lease, using the money I had earned from 3 weeks of overtime, my hand didn't shake. I was signing my own Declaration of Independence. I moved in with my black trash bag of clothes, my framed diploma, and my laptop. I had no furniture. For the first week, I slept on my clean scrubs, folded into a pile as a pillow. It was the best sleep I'd had in a decade. The sun woke me up, streaming through a large, clean window that overlooked an alley, and the only sound was the distant city. No washing machine, no fluorescent buzz, no footsteps of people who resented my presence. My first act of furnishing was not a bed or a sofa. It was a coat. I walked into a department store downtown, a place I had only ever window shopped, and I walked to the outerwear section. I found a coat made of thick, dark gray wool, with a high collar and deep pockets. It was heavy, beautifully constructed, and expensive. It cost more than a month of my mother's groceries. I tried it on. It felt like armor. It was an embrace. It was the first thing I had bought for myself, for no other reason than I wanted it. Since I'd started my career, I paid for it in cash. The crisp bills from my overtime, and I wore it out of the store. I walked through the cold Denver streets, my hands buried in the fleece-lined pockets, and I felt something I hadn't realized. I'd lost a sense of self. I was a person who existed, separate from what I could do for others. With that stability, the world began to open. The next week, my manager at Horizon Ridge, a tough, no-nonsense woman named Beth, pulled me aside after my shift. "Bishop," she said, "not one for pleasantries. You've been picking up a lot of nights. You look tired, but your charts are perfect. I'm just focusing." "Beth." "Good. The night charge nurse position is opening up. The last one transferred to surgical. It's an acting role for now. 6 months. With a pay bump. It's yours if you want it. It's more admin. Less floor. But you're the only one I trust not to let the unit burn down. I was stunned. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. It was more than a pay bump. It was a step up. It was recognition. It was a path. That same day. I opened my laptop and enrolled in an evening class at Front Range Community College. It wasn't another nursing certification. It was Introduction to Human Resources Management. I had spent my life as an asset to be mismanaged. I decided it was time to learn the language of policy, of payroll, of corporate liability. I didn't know where it would lead, but it felt like I was finally building a house for myself, not just paying for someone else's. The silence from my family was deafening. I had, in effect, disappeared. The only news I got came in fragments, through the hospital grapevine. About a month after I moved out, I was in the cafeteria when Patricia, a home health nurse I knew vaguely from other floors, sat down across from me. "Camilla Bishop, right?" she asked, unwrapping a sandwich. "Yeah. Hi, Patricia. I thought that was you. Strange coincidence. I was just at your mother's house. I'm her new home care nurse." I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. "Oh. Yeah, her Medicaid finally kicked in. They've assigned our agency. Just a twice-a-week check-in, monitor her blood sugar, check her pressure, make sure she's taking her meds." "How is she?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "She's a piece of work," Patricia said, lowering her voice with a conspiratorial smile. "She's got a son living there, Logan total deadbeat, and his wife just left him." "She did." "Oh yeah, left last week, flew back to Seattle. Heard from the caseworker that she filed for divorce the day she landed. Said she didn't sign up to be a broke nursemaid to his broke family." Patricia mimicked the quote with her fingers. "He's apparently working now, though, at a fulfillment center, Amazon or one of those. You can tell he hates it. He just sits and sulks while I'm trying to draw his mother's blood." I just nodded, absorbing the information. The beige minimalist, Marla, had fled the moment the money dried up. The golden boy, Logan, was packing boxes on a night shift. The consequences were real. "Your mom, though," Patricia continued, taking a bite of her sandwich. "She's a character. She talks about you. A lot." This made me pause. "She does? What does she say?" "Oh, just mentions you. Keeps saying things like, 'Camila used to handle this,' or 'Camila knew which pharmacy.' She talks about you a lot. Seems to miss you." I didn't know what to do with that information. It was a small, soft, complicated thing, and I had no place to put it. I just filed it away. "Well," I said, finishing my coffee, "she's in good hands with you. Patricia, I've got to run." 3 months passed. 3 months of silence. It was January. My studio was my sanctuary. I had a bed now, and a small bookshelf. I was excelling in my HR class. The charge nurse role was challenging, and I was good at it. I was saving money. I was healing. The constant, thrumming anxiety that had lived in my sternum for 3 years had finally gone quiet. I was beginning to believe I had made it, that I was free. That was when the whispers started. It began with a text from my Aunt Marjorie, the one who had patted my arm at Thanksgiving. "Camila, dear, I am just so worried about your mother. She sounds so terribly frail. We are all praying for her, and for you. I hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive her." I stared at the text. Forgive her. Then came an email from an uncle I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, forwarded from a chain I wasn't on. The subject line was, "Please pray for Elaine." I felt the cold, familiar dread creeping back in. The narrative was being rewritten. The victim was being reassigned. The public declaration came on a Tuesday morning. I had just gotten home from my night shift, my mind full of staffing ratios and patient charts. I kicked off my shoes, made a cup of tea, and, As I did every morning, idly scrolled through Instagram, and there it was, Brooke's feed. It wasn't a story that would disappear. It was a permanent grid post. The photo was of my mother, Elaine, but it wasn't the Elaine I knew. She was sitting in the living room, in the armchair, but she looked smaller. She was artfully disheveled. She was holding a wooden cane that I had never seen before in my life. She was staring out the window, a single, perfect tear captured on her cheek. It was a beautifully composed shot, the lighting dramatic, her expression a perfect portrait of noble suffering. The caption, written by Brooke, was a masterpiece of passive aggression. "This is the bravest woman I know," it began. My Aunt Elaine, despite her serious health issues and being cruelly abandoned by those who should love her most, she gets up every day. She is surviving on almost nothing. Left to handle her crushing medical bills all alone after her daughter, a nurse of all things, decided she was a burden and walked out on Thanksgiving. We are all trying to help her pick up the pieces, but please, send your prayers and good vibes. True family is the one you choose. We love you. Elaine, you are not alone. I read it once. I read it twice. I looked at the cane. I looked at the artful tear. I looked at the hundreds of likes already pouring in. I saw comments from extended family. "This is criminal. I am disgusted. How can someone do that to their own mother?" The hot, acidic rage I had expected didn't come. I did not feel the urge to cry. The 3 months of peace, the wool coat, the HR class, the charge nurse title, they had built something new in me. They had built a spine. I was not the girl in the storage room anymore. I took a slow, deep breath, inhaling the peppermint tea. I looked at the photo, the lies, the public performance of my execution. I set my mug down. I picked up my laptop. I opened it. I clicked on the encrypted drive. I opened the file, House Care, XLSX. I saw the first tab, with its $90,000 total, and then I clicked over to the second tab, the empty one, the one I had created in Maddie's apartment, in the dark, 3 months ago, the one labeled Proof Holidays. It was time to fill it in. I sat at my small kitchen table, the morning sun from my new window illuminating the screen of my laptop. Brooke's post was still open. The artful tear, the cane, the caption, a public declaration that I was a monster. I had been trained for this. In the ICU, you do not react to the alarm. You react to the patient. You do not react to the family's grief. You react to the data on the monitor. Hysteria is a luxury. Panic is a privilege. I had neither. I was not writing a letter. I was compiling a report. My first step was to open the HouseCare XLSX file. I reviewed the grand total, $89,455. I added a new line item, $950, dated December 1st, the final payment, the severance. The grand total was now over $90,000. I saved the file as a PDF. One attachment. Next, I opened the folder on my cloud drive containing the scanned documents. I had done this methodically in the weeks I was at Maddie's. The mortgage statements, all 36 of them. The pharmacy receipts, a thick digital stack. Each one a testament to the $800 plus cost she had never questioned. I merged these into a single, massive PDF file. A second attachment. Then, I opened my payroll portal for Horizon Ridge Health. I downloaded my pay stub from October, the last full month before I left. I circled my net take-home pay $4,120. I then circled the line items on my bank statement for that same month, the $2,000 transfer to my mother's account for the mortgage and bills, and the $812 payment to the pharmacy. I wrote a single line at the bottom, remaining personal income $1,308. I saved this as a third PDF. Finally, I went to the black trash bag that still sat in the corner of my new closet. I had not unpacked everything. From the bottom, I pulled out the frames, my nursing diploma, my Nurse of the Year plaque, the certification from the board. They were still streaked with the coffee grounds from Marla's trash can. I had not laminated them yet, as the outline in my head suggested. The photo of them, as they were, was more potent. I laid them out on my clean, hardwood floor, the pristine white of my nursing degree, stained brown, the cheap gold plating of the plaque, smeared with grit. I took a single, high-resolution photograph from above. The composition was stark. It looked like evidence from a crime scene. I saved it as discarded assets, JPEG. A fourth attachment. I opened my email. I did not use my personal account. I used the anonymous, secure one I had created weeks ago. Just in case. In the to field, I began to type my mother, Elaine, my cousin, Logan, my cousin, Brooke, my Aunt Marjorie, my uncle, the two other cousins who had commented on Brooke's post, everyone who had been in the family group text, everyone who had been at that Thanksgiving table. The list was long. I clicked to the subject line. I typed 36 months, data and accountability. I clicked into the body of the email. I did not write Dear Family. I wrote To all concerned parties. It has come to my attention that a significant amount of false information regarding my relationship with my mother, Elaine Bishop, is being circulated. This narrative is false, and it is damaging. For the past 3 years, I have been the sole financial support for the household at 2450 Elmwood Drive. This was a role I took on privately. The private nature of this arrangement has now been exploited to create a public, fictitious story of my abandonment. I am not a victim. I am a creditor. My attempts to resolve this with facts have been called dramatic. My silence has been interpreted as guilt. I will no longer be silent. Attached, you will find 4 files. Financial Summary 36. Months. PDF. A complete, itemized spreadsheet of all mortgage, medical, insurance, and household expenses I have paid since November 2019. The total exceeds $90,000. Supporting invoices full, PDF. A compilation of the corresponding mortgage statements, pharmacy invoices, and insurance premiums to verify the data in the spreadsheet. Income versus expense octix. A simple breakdown of my monthly income versus the funds required to support the household. Discarded assets, JPEG. A photograph of my professional certifications, which were thrown in the trash by Marla and Logan, with Elaine's approval, during the week of Thanksgiving. These documents are not an attack. They are an audit. They are the facts. The narrative of my abandonment is a lie, designed to cover for the fact that Logan, upon returning home, was unable or unwilling to assume any financial responsibility, and that my mother actively chose to enable this. This information is provided for the sole purpose of clarification. It is not an invitation to debate, argue, or discuss. The facts are final. Sincerely, Camilla Bishop. My finger hovered over the send button for 1 second. I thought of the girl in the storage room. I thought of the smell of bleach. I thought of my mother sipping her wine. I clicked send. The first 24 hours were silent. I went to my HR class. I went to my charge nurse shift. I came home, slept, and woke up. I expected the silence to continue. I had, perhaps, stunned them into permanent retreat. At 4 p.m. the next day, my phone, which had been quiet for 3 months, began to vibrate. It did not stop. It was a flood. Texts, voicemails, emails to my personal account, now that they knew where to find me. The first was from my Aunt Marjorie. A text. Camilla, I have just read your email. I have no words. I am ashamed. I had no idea. We just believed. Oh, dear God, we are so sorry. The next was a voicemail from my uncle. He was crying. I saw the pharmacy bills, Camila, and your paycheck. I am calling Brooke and giving her a piece of my mind. This is monstrous. What they did. I'm just sick. Another text. From a cousin. Wiping that disgusting post off my feed. I feel like an idiot. I am so sorry. Cammy, Please let us know what we can do. And on and on. My phone was a chorus of apologies, a wave of shock and shame. The likes on Brooke's post had not just stopped, they were being actively deleted. The post itself vanished from Instagram at 5:15 p.m. I read each message. I let each voicemail play. And to every single one, I sent the exact same pre-written text response. Thank you for reading. This information is not for debate. I appreciate you understanding. It was cold, but it was final. It gave them no room to argue, to make excuses for Elaine, or to offer empty platitudes. It was an acknowledgement of their apology and a closing of the door. Then, at 6 p.m., a text from a number I didn't have saved, but which I recognized, Logan. I read your email, the attachments. I had no idea. I was wrong. That's all. I was wrong. I've been paying Mom's pharmacy bills since that day at the store, and I'm going to keep paying. I'm figuring it out. I'm sorry. I stared at that. It was the first honest thing he had ever said to me. I typed my standard reply. Thank you for reading. This information is not for debate. He replied one more time. I know. I'm not debating. I'm just telling you. I put the phone down. I had done it. I had replaced their story with the truth. The audit was complete. An hour later, one last call. My mother, Elaine. I let it ring. I did not want to hear her cry. I did not want to hear her excuses. She called again, and again. On the fourth call, I answered. Hello? Camilla. Her voice was not hysterical. It was not weepy. It was flat, utterly defeated. Camilla. I need to see you. Please. Not to argue. I need to see you. One more time. I paused. Why? I will explain. Please. The coffee shop. Tomorrow morning. Just, please. I should have said no. I had closed the case, but some small academic part of me, the part that had just studied HR, was curious. What happens after the audit, when all the numbers are on the table? Fine, I said. 9 a.m. like before. I hung up. The next morning, I arrived first. I did not sit at the cold table by the window. That was the table for the indictment. I chose a different seat, a small two-person booth in the back, upholstered in cracked vinyl. It was a place for conversations, not confrontations. I was in control of the environment. She came in, looking just as she had before, frail, tired, but the panic was gone. She was just empty. She sat down, her hands trembling on the table. She did not order a coffee. She just looked at me. He looked like he had a better future, she said. I said nothing. That's why, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears she didn't let fall. All those years, it wasn't that I didn't love you. It was, I'm a weak woman. Camila, I'm a foolish, weak woman. And I looked at you, and I looked at Logan. And Logan, he was the boy. He was charming. He talked about big things, big money, big ideas. He looked like he had more potential. He looked like the winning horse, and I bet on him. I put all my chips on him. She looked down at her hands. And you were just steady. You were just good. You got the scholarship. You got the nursing degree. You got the job. You paid the bills. You never gave me anything to worry about. So I never thought about you. It was easier to lean on you. It was just easier. It was the most honest and the most brutal confession of my life. She had not favored him out of love. She had favored him as an investment, and she had treated me like a utility. I had been waiting for this my entire life. I had expected to feel a hot, burning rage. I had expected to finally scream at her. I felt nothing. The diagnosis was confirmed. The case was closed. You don't rage at a data point. You just accept it. I understand, I said. My voice was quiet. She looked up at me, shocked. She had expected a fight. "You understand? I understand why you did it," I said. "It doesn't make it right. It just makes sense. You thought he was your retirement plan, and I was your checking account." She flinched, but she didn't deny it. What happens now?" she whispered. I took a breath. I looked past her, out the window. "It will take time," I said. "A long time. For me to process this, and our relationship. It will never be what it was. Mom, it can't be. It's going to be different now. I'm not your daughter nurse. I'm not your financial safety net. I'm just Camilla. And I live across town. That's who I am now. I can accept that," she said, nodding, the tears finally rolling down her cheeks. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at her. I thought about the storage room. I thought about the wine glass. I thought about the $90,000. I stood up from the booth. "I have to get to my class," I said. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't ask again. She just watched me. I did not hug her. I did not promise to call her. I did not offer a single word of comfort. I just gave her a small final nod, and I walked away. The acting charge nurse role became permanent. Beth officially signed the paperwork promoting me to senior nurse, and the pay increase that came with it was the first real financial breath I had taken in my adult life. It wasn't a windfall, but it was enough. It was the difference between surviving and building. My first act of building, after the wool coat, was a bookshelf. I spent a Saturday, a day I would normally be sleeping off a night shift, in a real furniture store. I found a tall, simple shelf made of dark, solid wood. I paid to have it delivered. When it arrived, I assembled it myself in the middle of my small studio, the scent of fresh lacquer and wood filling the air. Before I put any books on it, I went to the closet. I took out my framed diploma, my nursing certifications, and my Nurse of the Year award. I carried them to the small kitchen sink. I unhooked the back of the frames, took out the glass, and I washed them. I carefully, meticulously, scrubbed away the dried, faint stains of Marla's coffee grounds. I cleaned the glass until it squeaked. I polished the cheap metal of the plaque. I reassembled them, my hands steady. I placed them on the center shelf of my new bookshelf. They were no longer evidence. They were trophies. They were reminders, not of the disrespect, but of the fact that I had earned them, and I had reclaimed them. My nights became a new kind of focused. After my shifts, I would make tea and open my laptop for my HR class. The language of it was fascinating. It was the language of corporations, but it was also the language of boundaries. I read chapters on resource management, conflict resolution, accountability structures, and defining scope of work. I realized I had not just been a daughter. I had been an uncontracted, unpaid, misclassified employee for a dysfunctional family unit. I was the entire finance department, the entire healthcare procurement division, and the on-call crisis manager, all for zero pay and zero respect. My mother was the CEO. Logan was the failed, bailed-out subsidiary, and Marla and Brooke were the toxic consultants who had come in to recommend my termination. The HR courses gave me a vocabulary for my own trauma. It wasn't just unfair, it was a failure of management. It was a complete breakdown of policy. Learning this new, cold, objective language was strangely empowering. It moved my experience from the realm of messy, uncontrollable emotion to a clear, definable case study, a problem with a solution, and the solution, I had discovered, was a one-word policy: no. 6 months passed. The snows of January melted. Spring came to Denver, and with it, my final grade for the HR course an A. The hospital was a living entity. An internal word traveled fast. Beth, my manager, was not the only one who had noticed my work. I received an email not from the nursing division, but from the hospital's main administration. The senior HR coordinator for the nursing staff was retiring. They had seen my performance as a charge nurse, managing the unit's complex staffing and conflicts. They had also seen, on my internal employee file, that I had just completed the HR management certification. They were offering me an internal transfer, An interview, a formality, and the job was mine. I stared at the email. It was a different world. It was an office. It was a desk. It was Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It meant no more nights, no more 12s, no more working Christmas. It meant weekends, real weekends. The concept was so foreign I couldn't quite grasp it. It was a pay cut. Technically, from the brutal overtime I had been pulling as a senior nurse, but my bills were just my bills. I didn't need the overtime to stay afloat. I had a surplus. I accepted the position. My last shift in the ICU was strange. I said goodbye to the beeps, the alarms, the familiar sterile smell. I said goodbye to Maddie, though I would see her outside of work now. I felt a pang of sadness, leaving the front lines, but as I swiped my badge to leave at 7 in the morning, for the last time, I felt only relief. I was leaving a life of constant reaction. I was walking toward a life of intention. With the new job came a new life. The studio apartment, which had been my sanctuary, now felt like a temporary shelter. With my stable, predictable income, I found a real apartment, a one-bedroom, in a quiet building with an elevator and an old, slow-growing ivy on the brick walls. It had a separate kitchen, it had a bedroom with a door I could close, and it had a small dining alcove. I bought a table. It was small and round, with only 2 chairs, but it was a table. It was not a couch or my lap. It was a place to sit, to eat, a place to host. The first person I hosted was Maddie. She came over on a Saturday afternoon, my first Saturday off. The feeling was glorious. The sun was high in the sky. I was not sleeping, and I did not have to go to work. She brought a vase with 3 bright, enormous sunflowers. "For the new digs," she said, putting them in the center of my new, tiny table. "It's official. You're a civilian now. How does it feel to wear clothes that aren't scrubs?" "It's weird," I laughed, pouring her a glass of water. "I keep thinking I'm forgetting something." We sat at the table, just 2 chairs, just 2 friends. The sunlight streamed in. It was simple, it was normal, and it was everything I had ever wanted. That night, I went to sleep in my new bedroom. The apartment was quiet. I was not exhausted from a double shift. I was just content. I fell asleep easily. And for the first time, I realized it had been months since I'd had the dream. The one where I was trapped in the storage room, the walls smelling of bleach, the sound of the washing machine sloshing like a drowning sea. It was just gone. The nightmares had stopped. The old life faded. The details delivered to me in small second-hand pieces. Patricia, the home health nurse, told me at a retirement party for another doctor that the house on Elmwood Drive had been sold. The proceeds, after the mortgage was paid, were not enough. After Logan's significant debts were factored in debts my mother had apparently co-signed on years ago, there was almost nothing left. Elaine had not, in the end, been able to afford to stay there. She had moved into a subsidized senior living apartment complex across town. Patricia still saw her. "She's doing okay," she said, shrugging. "The place is clean, and her meals are managed." Logan, she told me, was still at the warehouse. He was now a shift supervisor. He had not, apparently, launched his disruptive startup, but he was sending my mother a small, non-negotiable amount of money every 2 weeks, direct deposited into her account. The bragging was gone. The Facebook posts of rooftop cocktails had been replaced by a long, profound silence. And Brooke? Her Instagram, once a relentless stream of self-promotion and passive-aggressive blessings, had gone dormant. After the email, after the public retraction of her post, she had simply stopped. There were no more stories, no more podcasts. It was as if she were a balloon that had been pricked, and all the hot, toxic air had just leaked out. She was waiting. I figured, waiting for a new drama, a new script to read from. I lived my new life. I was good at my HR job. I was organized. I was empathetic but firm. I was, it turned out, uniquely qualified to handle policy violations and interpersonal conflicts. Summer turned to autumn. The leaves changed. The air grew crisp. It was almost a year, a full, complete year since I had dragged my life out of that house in a trash bag. One evening in early November, I came home to my quiet apartment, sorted my mail, and found a card. It was thick, cream-colored. It was not a bill. It was not junk mail. I opened it. It was a Thanksgiving invitation. The handwriting was my Aunt Marjorie's. The return address was her house in Aurora. It wasn't a long, emotional plea. It was just a card. "Dearest Camila," it read, "we are hosting Thanksgiving this year, just the family. We all very much hope you will come. It would make the house so cheerful to have you here." I stood in my kitchen, holding the card. I looked at the sunflowers on my table, long since dried, but still beautiful. I looked at my bookshelf, my diploma shining in the lamplight. I was not the same person who had sat at that folding chair. The invitation was a question. It was a test, and I finally felt calm enough to answer it. The invitation sat on my small, two-person table for 3 days. It was a simple, cream-colored card, but it felt as heavy as a lawsuit. "It would make the house so cheerful to have you here." The words were my Aunt Marjorie's, but the subtext was a minefield, laid by the entire family. They had apologized after my email. They had expressed shock and shame, but that was 10 months ago. 10 months is a long time for a family to sit with its own guilt. Guilt sours. It turns to resentment. It looks for a way to rewrite itself again. This invitation was not an olive branch. It was a summons. They wanted to see if the new, quiet, independent Camila would fold. They wanted to see if a year of silence had softened me. They wanted to see if I was ready to come back and be the good one again, to absorb their discomfort and make the holiday cheerful. I was going, but I was not going as a niece or a daughter. I was going as an auditor. I was going as the HR coordinator, attending a mandatory high-risk meeting with a dysfunctional department. The event, I learned from a follow-up text from my aunt, was at her home in Aurora, and she'd added, "Brooke is being such a wonderful help. She's organizing the whole flow of the evening." Of course she was. The director was back, with a new show to produce. I spent the Tuesday before Thanksgiving preparing. My preparation did not involve recipes. I had a thin wooden box, the kind designed to hold important documents. It was walnut, with a simple brass latch, and I'd bought it specifically for this purpose. It was my go bag, my proof holidays file. Given physical form, into it. I placed the printout of the HouseCare XLSX file, the 36-month timeline, $90,000, itemized. I'd updated the font. It was now a crisp, clear Times New Roman, 12-point. Beside it, I placed a document I had acquired 3 months after the email. It was a copy of the Financial Responsibility and Contact Authorization form that Elaine had been required to sign to finalize her subsidized senior housing and Medicaid case. It was a standard, boring, bureaucratic paper, but it had a very specific, beautiful clause, one my new HR-trained eyes had spotted immediately. It legally designated her case manager and her next of kin, Logan Bishop, as the sole points of financial and medical contact, and at the bottom, in her shaky, thin signature, was Elaine Bishop. I was, by law, no longer in the chain of command. Then, I added the USB drive. It was a small, black, unremarkable piece of plastic. On it was a single audio file. I had found it when clearing my phone's memory, a year ago, sitting in my storage room, surrounded by Marla's beige infixation. I had instinctively hit record on my phone before I'd gone out to confront them about the laundry. I had forgotten about it, but I had recorded the entire conversation. I had listened to it once, in my new, quiet apartment. The audio was shockingly clear. Marla's voice, "Time for you to be independent. It's time for you to get out on your own." Elaine's voice, soft and traitorous. "She's right, honey. You should be out living your own life." Logan's voice, chiming in, "Rearrange the living situation properly." It was a one-party consent recording, made in a home I was legally paying for. It was admissible. It was irrefutable. It was the sound of my own eviction. I showed the box to Maddie over coffee. "It's a break glass in case of emergency box," she said, tapping the lid. "This is some next-level black belt boundary setting. Cammy, I'm impressed, and a little scared." "I don't want to use it," I said, latching it. "I want to go, eat turkey, talk about the weather, and leave." "But you're not going in unarmed," she said, her eyes serious. "That's the difference. You're not the guest. You're a nuclear power. They won't launch if they know you have the codes. Don't open that box unless they cross a hard, red line." "I won't," I promised. The calls started the night before. The first was Elaine. Her voice was thin, nervous. "Camilla, you got the invitation." "I did. Mom, I'm planning to come." "Oh," she said. A wave of profound, audible relief. "Oh, that's wonderful. That's just so wonderful. Just, just for dinner. It will be so nice to just have a nice dinner." She was pleading. She was begging me, in her own way, not to bring the truth. "I'm looking forward to a quiet dinner," I said, my voice polite and neutral. "But I have one condition." "Anything, honey, anything." "No cameras," I said. "No phones out, no videos, no pictures, and no podcasts. I am not coming to be content for Brooke's Instagram feed. I am coming as a guest. If I see a phone recording, I'm leaving." "Of course." "Oh, absolutely. I'll tell her. No cameras. Yes, I'll tell her right now. Thank you. Camilla. Thank you." She hung up, seemingly satisfied. My phone buzzed 10 minutes later. It was the old family group text, a thread that had been dead for 10 months, a new message from Brooke. "So excited to see everyone tomorrow for a real traditional Thanksgiving. It's a day for family, gratitude, and for really talking about what family responsibility means to all of us. Can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts. See you at 4. My fingers went cold. The provocation. It was so blatant, so immediate. It was almost childish. She was furious about my condition, and this was her retaliation. She was setting the theme. She was laying the trap. The word responsibility sat there, in all caps, pulsing like a neon sign. I stared at the text. I felt the familiar, old spike of adrenaline, the fight or flight. But then, a new, calmer feeling took over. The HR coordinator, she has just circulated a hostile meeting agenda. I was about to type, "I will not be attending," when my phone buzzed again, a private text, from Logan. "Hey, I saw Brooke's text. Don't let her get to you. She's Brooke. I told Mom I'd be there. I'll be there. If you need me to, confirm anything, I will." I read his text 3 times. "If you need me to, I'll confirm." It was the first time in our entire lives he had ever offered to back me up. The man packing boxes at the warehouse was, it turned out, a different man from the one who drank cocktails on rooftops. He was living in reality now. He was a potential, if reluctant, witness. "Thank you, Logan," I typed back. "I plan on it being a quiet evening. See you tomorrow." I put the phone down. The game had changed. I went back to my wooden box. I opened it one last time. I took out the HouseCare XLSX printout. It was comprehensive, but it was dense. It was a lot of numbers. If Brooke was going to make this a public debate, I needed a better visual aid. I spent the next hour creating a new document. I called it the Elmwood Drive Care and Expense Timeline. I made a table, 36 rows, one for each month I had paid for everything. I kept it simple, 4 columns. Column 1 month year, column 2, mortgage utilities paid, YN. Column 3, insurance medical paid, YN. Column 4 notes. In the notes column for October 2022, I wrote, Elaine, Logan, and Marla requested Camilla move to storage room. In the notes column for November 2022, I wrote, Camilla asked to leave the residence. Camilla assumes 100% of household costs for the 30-day period. in the notes column for December 2022. I wrote, "Final mortgage payment made, financial responsibility transferred to Elaine Bishop, Logan Bishop." I printed it. It was one page, simple, devastating. I printed 10 copies, one for every adult who would be at the table. I slipped them into the wooden box, right on top, on Thanksgiving Day. I did not wake up with dread. I woke up with purpose. I dressed with care, not in scrubs, not in a cheap sweater. I wore dark gray trousers, a simple black silk blouse, and my good wool coat. I realized, like I was going to a deposition. I put the thin walnut-colored box into my tote bag. I grabbed my keys. I stood at the door of my quiet, peaceful apartment. I took a slow, deep breath, in and out. The air was clean. It did not smell of bleach or mildew. I touched the cool, smooth wood of the box through the side of my bag. The calm was absolute. It was the feeling I got just before I pushed the Ativan. The feeling before a code, when the alarms are blaring and your mind goes completely, beautifully silent and focused. You know the procedure. You know your role. You are not afraid. You are simply ready. I drove to Aurora. Aunt Marjorie's house was in a nice, quiet suburb, the kind with manicured lawns and inflatable turkeys. I parked on the street. I walked up the stone pathway. The house was blazing with light. I could hear the muffled sound of laughter, of a crowd. I stood on the front step. From inside, I could smell it, unmistakable, rolling out to greet me. The rich, savory, complex smell of roasting turkey, the smell of sage and onions, the smell of the performance. I lifted my hand, and I rang the doorbell. Aunt Marjorie's house was dazzling and suffocatingly warm. The table was set for 20. It was a replica of last year's performance, the linen, the candles, the artful sprays of autumn leaves. The sheer, overwhelming effort of it all was a statement in itself, a desperate attempt to prove that last year was an anomaly, that this was the real family, happy, normal, cheerful. I was seated, not on a folding chair this time, but at a proper place setting, wedged between a second cousin and my uncle. Elaine was at the far end, Logan beside her. I was, I noted, placed as far from them as geographically possible. Then I saw it. Next to Brooke's plate, sitting on a tiny tripod, was a small, silver microphone, the kind podcasters use. Her phone was propped up, aimed down the table. My mother caught my eye and gave a small, terrified shake of her head, as if to say, I told her not to, but she hadn't stopped her. "Okay, everyone, Brooke chirped, her voice artificially bright. She tapped the microphone, and a small, tinny thump echoed from a Bluetooth speaker on the sideboard. "Welcome to the official family Thanksgiving gratitude cast. I'm just recording our toasts so we can all remember this wonderful, healing evening." She was violating the one condition I had set. She was doing it publicly, and she was doing it first. "Aunt Marjorie, you start," Brooke said. The toasts began. My aunt was thankful for everyone being here, together again. My uncle was thankful for his new job. The second cousin was thankful for his new car. It was a parade of beige, surface-level gratitude. With every toast, I could feel the tension in the room build. Everyone was avoiding the landmine. Everyone was speaking around the events of last year. Then, it was Brooke's turn. She picked up the microphone, holding it like a celebrity. "I am thankful," she said, her voice dropping, becoming serious. "For responsibility." She had been waiting all night to say this word. "I'm thankful for the people who understand what it means to be family, the ones who show up, who don't run away, who don't abandon the people who raise them just because things get hard." Her eyes, bright and malicious, found mine across the table. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the faint, high-pitched whine of the microphone. This was the moment, the trap she had been setting since her group text. This was the public trial. She was daring me to defend myself. And then, she said it, the line she had been polishing for a year, the sequel to her original hit. "I mean, seriously," she said, with a light, tinkling laugh. After all that drama last year. Camilla, why did you even come back? This was it, the hard red line. I did not look at Brooke. I looked at my mother. I watched Elaine. I watched her as the entire table turned to me. I saw the panic in her eyes. I saw her hand, slightly trembling, reach for her glass of red wine. I saw her lift it to her lips, and for the second time in her life, in the face of my public humiliation. My mother sipped her wine. She looked away. She said nothing. Thank you, Brooke, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. You've just clarified the purpose of this meeting. The performance was over. The audit was beginning. I reached down to my tote bag. I pulled out the thin walnut-colored wooden box. I placed it on the table in front of me with a soft, definitive click. It was not a plate of food. It was a piece of evidence. I unfastened the small brass latch. The sound was incredibly loud in the silence. I opened the lid. Inside, as I had planned, my files sat, perfectly organized. My printed timeline, the stapled copies, the USB. It was, as I'd intended, as clean and sterile as a surgical tray. What is that? My uncle asked, his voice nervous. Camilla, don't, my mother pleaded from the end of the table, her face pale. You invited me here, Brooke, I said, not looking at my mother. You asked me a question. I'm going to answer it. I took the small black USB drive from the box. You're recording a podcast, I said. That's good. It means you appreciate primary source audio. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I plugged the drive into an adapter. I plugged the adapter into my phone. I hit play, my own voice, from a year ago, echoed from my phone's speaker, thin and tinny. Mom, I need to sleep. I can't take care of patients if I'm a zombie. Then, Marla's. Don't be dramatic. You are being so dramatic. And then, the audio from the dining room, Marla's voice, clear as a bell. Time for you to be independent. It's time for you to get out on your own. Live your own life. Elaine's voice, soft and final. She's right. Honey, you should be out living your own life. Logan's voice. Rearrange the living situation properly. I pressed stop. No one was eating. No one was breathing. Brooke's face was chalk white. The microphone in her hand looked ridiculous. That, I said, was the audio from Thanksgiving, last year, the drama you referred to. Brooke, the day I was told, by my mother, my cousin, and his wife, that it was time for me to get out of the house I was paying for. I reached back into the box. I took out the stack of one-page timelines. But I know, I said, my voice calm and clear. That audio can be taken out of context. So, I've prepared a simple timeline, a summary of the responsibility you wanted to discuss. I stood up. I walked around the table. I placed a single sheet of paper, face down, in front of every adult, in front of my aunt, my uncle, my cousins. I placed one in front of Logan. I placed one in front of Brooke. And I placed the last one in front of my mother. Elaine, I returned to my seat. Please, turn it over. They did. I watched their eyes move across the grid. I watched my uncle's face flush a dark, angry red. I heard my Aunt Marjorie let out a small, horrified gasp. She put her hand over her mouth. What is this? She whispered. That is a 36-month summary, I said. A simple yes-no chart of who paid for your sister's life. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the $90,000 in medication and care, and right there, I pointed to the row for November 2022. Is the note, Camilla asked to leave the residence. That is the abandonment Brooke has been writing about. Brooke was staring at the paper, her mouth open. Content is just content, she stammered. I was just telling her story. You were telling a lie, I said, my voice like ice. I pulled the final document from my email archive on my phone. The screenshot of her Instagram post, "This is your story, Brooke," The picture of my mother with a cane she doesn't use, the caption about crushing medical bills, and this, I held up the timeline, is the data. They don't match. That is called libel. Enough. The shout came from Logan. He stood up. He was shaking. He looked at Brooke with a contempt I had never seen. Then he looked at me. "She's right," he said, his voice loud in the room. "All of you. She's right. I was there. I was a coward. I let her pay for everything. I let Marla throw her things out. I heard that recording, and it's true. And that timeline, every word of it is true. She paid for it all. I confirm it. She paid for everything." Elaine, at the end of the table, finally broke. She dropped her wine glass. It didn't shatter. It just hit the table with a dull thud, red wine splashing over the white linen like blood. Her hand was shaking so violently she couldn't control it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words choked. "Camila, I'm so sorry." There was no wine to hide behind. There was no Logan to defend her. There was just the timeline, the audio, and the truth. I looked at her. I gave her a small, sad nod. I reached into my wooden box one last time. I pulled out the final document, the copy of the financial authorization form. "I'm glad you've all seen the data," I said. "It simplifies this last piece of business." I placed the form on the table. "This is a copy of the financial responsibility and contact authorization my mother signed for her new residence. As you can all see, the sole financial and medical contacts are her case manager and her next of kin, Logan Bishop." I looked around the table. "This means, from this day forward, I am no longer legally or financially involved. All bills, all questions, all responsibilities now go through the proper channels, to the facility, to her son. My accounts are permanently closed." I stood up. I placed my phone back in my bag. I began to place the documents, one by one, back into the walnut box, the timeline, the audio drive. Aunt Marjorie reached out and put her hand on my arm. Her eyes were full of tears. "Camila," she whispered, her voice thick. What do you need from us? From them?" I paused, my hand on the lid of the box. I looked at her, and then at the rest of the table, at their stunned, ashamed faces. "Just respect," I said. "Just the truth." I closed the lid. I fastened the brass latch. I put the box in my tote bag. I pulled my keys from my pocket. They jingled, the sound echoing in the total, absolute silence. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor. Brooke's microphone was off. Her phone, which had been recording, was now face down on the table. I looked at Logan. He met my gaze. He was pale, but he nodded, an acknowledgement. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the red wine seeping into her tablecloth. Her face a mask of complete and total ruin. There was no blame in my heart. There was no anger. There was just an ending. The numbers had been balanced. The account was closed. I turned. I walked out of the dining room, down the hall. I did not run. My footsteps were even and steady on the floor. I reached the front door. I opened it. A blast of cold. Clean November air hit my face. It was the smell of freedom. I stepped out onto the porch, and I pulled the door shut behind me, the sound of the latch clicking into place. My heels were loud on the gravel path. A steady, rhythmic crunch in the darkness. I did not look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. So please comment below and let's share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.